You are now listening to the Serious Growth Podcast with your host, Leo Costa Jr.
And tell you about our products.
Do you want a bone-crushing grip? Good, because you're gonna get one with the amazing new TRS gripper. It's a progressive grip builder with longer handles and a special ergonomic design that's like a dozen hand grippers in one. Start off easy and work your way up to quickly build your grip strength from wet noodle to pulverizing. The package includes a video from the world-famous strength coach, Dr. Russ Horine, the man who worked with Leo Costa to help bring you big beyond belief in the Bulgarian power burst. Dr. Horine shows you a simple and easy to follow workout plan that takes just minutes a day right from in front of your TV set if you want. So click on the link below and let's get started building you a stronger, firmer, bone-crushing grip.
Rachel, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
You know something? The last time that we were together, you were in a salon chair like I was. You were right across from me.
You've got to be kidding me.
Dennis, isn't Dennis your hairstylist?
Yes. He brought me up. He brought you up yesterday. So now
Come on, Rachel. You're younger than me. I didn't.
Yes, of course. I remember you very, very well.
Anyway.
Dennis, I got my hair done yesterday and Dennis asked me, did you go on the bodybuilding show?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does he know about that?
Dennis, I'll tell you what, you'll be surprised, maybe not. I've gotten a lot of people from him that's come on the podcast. Interestingly enough, he hasn't come on. I don't think he's real comfortable with the podcasting, but
I don't see him as being a podcast person.
Yeah, he meant a few words in some ways, but
he is a man of few words.
Yeah, but no, and I've gotten lots of really interesting people. So yeah, the minute I came in, he introduced me to you, and you were like hair, everything was all up, and you were busy like a beaver. So anyway,
that's so funny. Yeah, he mentioned, I literally came from him yesterday and he mentioned, did you go on the bodybuilding show?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going on tomorrow.
I'm actually going to see Dennis next Friday.
That's so funny. Well, tell him I say hello and you can tell him what you think of the results.
I love Dennis.
He gave me a cut.
Yeah. Dennis is amazing. I got into a while back, I wrote a book after my bodybuilding days called From Homeless to Handsome, because as a bodybuilder, I basically looked like I was homeless. I didn't care what I looked like.
You look great.
But I didn't care when I was bodybuilding at those days because all I cared about was being on stage. Now that was different. But when you're bodybuilding, you're so big anyway that you can't fit in normal clothes. So you just put whatever that drapes over you. I look kind of homeless, you know what I mean? And so anyway,
I understand what you're talking about. Like,
So after I got out of the sport, I thought, what the hell am I going to do now? And I won't get into it, but I got into fashion, believe it or not. And that's the last thing I would have thought of. And it's called From Homeless to Handsome. I haven't published it yet, but I got into all.
If you do, please let me know. I'll have to buy a copy.
Yeah. So I got into that and I learned all kinds of good stuff, So Dennis, I interviewed Dennis before I got my haircut because I knew the questions to ask to see if my potential new hairstylist knew what he was talking about. I interviewed.
Yeah. So he cuts your hair.
Yeah. He cuts my hair.
Yeah, he does a nice job. Your hair looks really good.
No, he's awesome. I was just telling Jason next to me that my hair looks good without any product from the day he cuts it to 5 weeks or 4 weeks when I go back to him.
What's interesting about Dennis is like, I make appointments with him, but I'm like, we always say you could have gone another month.
Yeah.
Because his he highlights my hair.
Yeah.
The blonde lasts for so long that I could go longer, and I'm not used to that, which is great because it's not so good for your hair to always get a highlight. So it's good to go as long as you possibly can, Yeah.
And I've what I learned from Dennis is that the market of a good haircut and a hairstylist is that you don't need I have one where I do nothing with my hair except put water and I go,
Yeah.
and it looks, I mean, it's an amazing hairstylist. Anyway, welcome to
As a woman, I wish I could say the same, but I don't have to do a lot of maintenance.
Yeah.
I don't have to do a lot of maintenance.
Right. Anyway, welcome to Serious Growth Podcast. I'm glad that you came on.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry about missing last time. I appreciate it. Thanks for being so understanding.
No problem. Now, okay, so you're going to give us a little background, but you are a doctor and you have written some children books. So why don't you maybe tell the people that we're introducing you to, what kind of doctor are you? Tell us, you had an interesting story that happened to you in New York.
Can we avoid that?
Yes, no problem with that. So
okay, I'd appreciate it. I'm not going public with that story yet. I will eventually.
No. Yeah, no problem with that. So why don't you just take us what kind of doctor that you are and how did you get into writing? It's a certain type of book. I'll let you explain that.
Absolutely. So tell me when, anytime.
We've been on the whole time.
Oh, we're live. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you. Well, I am a surgical oncologist. I do breast cancer surgery. So that's, my main training and the type of surgery that I perform. So women who have breast cancer or who have high risk lesions that could lead to breast cancer, high risk family histories, counseling, things like that. That was the type of medicine that I have practiced for all this time. I have taken a break. As an aside, I got involved in a biotech venture. I'm the CEO and founder of a biotech company called Calum Diagnostic Solutions. I figured out how to render a biopsy result in about 5 to 10 minutes. So normally when someone goes for a biopsy because they have something that looks suspicious for cancer, it takes 5 days, maybe longer, sometimes a little shorter, to get the results back. But we're doing it in 5 minutes while the patient is still in the procedure room.
I think that's huge. I mean, when something like that happens,
thank you.
5 days to wait for a result would be a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for the patient. It's a nightmare for the hospitals. It's a nightmare. It's high cost. There's a whole cascade of events that happen because of this delay. Yeah. So my company is solving that problem as we speak. So that's number one. But at the same time, I also I realized a lifelong passion of mine, which was to write. I do write novels as well. But right now I'm focusing on a children's series called Dr. Roo. So it's a character that I came up with when I was a medical student, during pediatrics rotation. I kind of knew that I wasn't going to go into pediatrics. I loved kids, but I knew that wasn't how to explain it. It's the topics in medicine. It wasn't for me. It wasn't a good fit for me. So, and to be more explicit about that, I will tell you that, in the hospital, the kids were really, really, really sick. Yeah. And that broke my heart. And outside of the hospital, when you do outpatient medicine, there's a lot of ear infections and, sinus infections. And I wanted a little more variety, something a little more, I don't want to say challenging, but I wanted something, something a little more cerebral than the sort of run of the mill ear infection type things. Right. Pediatricians deal with very complex things. I am not in any way, denigrating what they do. They have to make some very complicated decisions and deal with very complicated situations. But that's the run of the mill day for a pediatrician outside, in the outpatient setting. Yeah. So I wanted to do, once I discovered that I liked working with my hands, I wanted to do something surgical, and I decided I was going to treat adults. So this was my way of sort of giving back to the kiddie population, to the children, was to write these books. So I came up with a series that basically each book deals with a medical problem of some sort that usually affects kids. Mm-hmm. I use animals, so they affect a certain type of animals of a certain culture. The culture is not that relevant. I just wanted to put in some cultural lessons. So whether it's sun protection or hand washing or nutrition or whatever it is, I have it affecting a certain culture. Yeah. Like I said, just to bring in the cultural lessons and to introduce the kids to a new place.
Yeah.
And Dr. Rue, who is our hero, she has to little by little narrow down what's causing the kids to get sick. So I send the kids on a health mystery, on an adventure. So, and I make it really exciting, like, what could be causing them to be sick from this cause or that cause or this cause or that cause. And I send the whole team racing after each cause, so that it does form, a storyline of an adventure, right, until she finally figures out what's wrong with the kids, so that they can, usually what I've been doing is I have them do a dance or some sort of performance at the end of the story that, these cubs are sick and we need them to perform at the 4th of July parade, but they can't move.
Yeah.
They're sick. So we have to figure out what's wrong with them so that they can perform. Right. So that's been, how most of the stories go. And in this most recent one, we really focus on nutrition very heavily.
Okay. And the thing that what I'm hearing from you, which I think is very creative, is that you're taking like the sickness of some of these kids. I'm assuming some of them are really, really sick, but it seems like you're doing it in a way where you're kind of lightening the mood in a way, but yet still getting a message to them and they're willing to participate, which is kind of a distraction in a way for maybe some of them that really understand what's going on with them if they're old enough.
Well, I mean, I've deliberately chosen, I'm not trying to take, just for purpose of this discussion, like multiple sclerosis or juvenile, rheumatoid arthritis or something very complicated for a kid that, has a complicated treatment and make a book out of that. I'm trying to take common issues, common, mostly preventive health problems that affect all of us, and use those as the basis for the stories. My goal is I don't want to scare the kids.
Right.
I want the kids to feel empowered, happy, like they have a lot of control over their health, which they do. Yeah. Especially when it comes to topics like nutrition or sun protection or things like that. Kids and their parents have full control over the outcome of the kid's health in those situations. So I recently, you'll find this funny, but I have a pediatrician friend who said that there's an outbreak of STDs or STIs, sexually transmitted infection amongst young kids.
Really?
Yes. And he said, if you're looking for a topic, and I said, thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah.
I don't see myself writing a book about that because, I just, getting into that topic and trying to explain it to parents and kids is just a little bit like dicey and not something that the Dr. Rue series really wants to get into. My next topic will probably be bullying or something to that effect.
Yeah. I think there's a wide range of things you go into. Now, as far as the nutrition and how you make that fun and relevant to the kids, what's your strategy? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, I'll try to be specific without a spoiler. This recent topic, it's called Dr. Rue in the Case of the Picnic Pirates. So right out of the gate, you've got an interesting title, right? Yeah. You've got what are the picnic pirates?
Makes me want to turn the page.
Right, that's exciting, right?
Yeah.
And Dr. Rue gets called to Washington, D.C. She's Australian based. And one of the mayors says, all of our bear cubs are sick. They're sick. We don't know what to do. They're sick in a vague way. Some of their tummy hurts. Some of their tummies hurt rather. Some of them are just off the wall. They're just running around like crazy. So they're sort of sick in a vague way. And it's a challenge because they don't all have the same symptoms. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Rue gets called to try to figure out what's wrong with them. And so she has to rule out whether they have the bear flu, funny things like, are they watching too much Bear TV?
That's good.
You know, are they over hibernating or oversleeping or something like that? So I put in some, you know, funny concepts in there. And I also teach what like hibernation is,
right,
you know, in the process, until she finally figures out what's wrong. And a series of events happen that that go into showing that basically the food from the 4th of July picnic has gone missing. So she sort of puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that the cubs got into the food they shouldn't have gotten into and didn't stop.
that's an interesting concept. It really is.
Right. So they made themselves, you know, hopped up on sugar and got themselves sick from eating bad food, from eating not bad foods, but you know, too much of the wrong foods,
right,
and even too much of the right foods. They just ate too much, you know,
because that's also a problem.
So, you know, it's and I have at the end of the book I have one of the characters doing a rap. And, you know, I can't really do the rap, but he goes, my name is FP Louie. FP stands for food pyramid. And I'm here to say what you eat every day can make or break your day, make or break your day, make or break your day, make your day. And then he goes into this whole, you know, from all the areas of the food groups, he talks about the different types of foods that are important for you, how much of which types of foods you should be eating, and why, and what that will do for you, for your energy levels, for your health levels, and things like that.
Yeah.
So
what is the age group of the people that you're mainly targeting?
It's generally 4 to 8, but I have found that even the older kids, like 10 to 12, they like these books.
Yeah.
See, those kids can be reading complex books, right? A 10-year-old, a 12-year-old is already reading a 200-page book. But you know, and I have a niece and a nephew that are exactly that age, and they're, you know, they read Harry Potter and, you know, complex books, but they still really love reading these books because you know, to use a phrase, I don't dumb it down for the kids. Like I use complex words, complex thoughts, and complex ideas. And so every child and the adults can learn from these books.
Yeah.
I can promise you that most adults don't know what goes into the food pyramid,
right.
and they can read these books and learn about what goes into the food pyramid. So, you know, I like to say there's really almost no age cap on this because everyone can learn from them.
Yeah.
And then even the younger kids, like let's say 2 to 3 years old, I have an amazing illustrator. Her name is Irina Drengova, and she's from the Ukraine. And I don't know if you have any pictures of the you know, storyline to show, but she is such a talented illustrator that these pictures are just coming to life. So even if you're 2 years old, you know, a 2-year-old will giggle looking at the pictures.
Yeah.
The pictures are just so powerful.
Yeah.
So even though a 2-year-old will not understand the meaning of the text, they will understand, or at least they will be able to be entertained by the pictures.
Let me ask you this, because I always try to correlate like the stuff that I do, because I'm in personal development, this is in that path as far as I'm concerned. You're trying to help people, obviously empower them. Okay. So I do the same damn thing.
Yeah, from a young age.
Yeah. But my frustration and my big obstacle, which I'm not concerned about the obstacle necessarily, but the truth is it's hard to get people to keep following through to be successful. So many people self-sabotage. And, you know, so I guess the question is this: how do you know how, I mean, what you're telling me sounds fantastic. I really get it. But what's the end game? How do you know just exactly how much you're impacting those people?
Right. This is a hard one because I'm not going around collecting data on the book. You know, I'm not, you know, handing out surveys and you know, following them up long term. I mean, it would be almost impossible with something like this because, you know, these books are, you know, meant to be mass produced and go out to thousands of people. A lot of it has got to be, that you self-police, that you you educate and you self-police. But one thing I have to tell you, I mean, I don't know, I've learned quite a bit about nutrition myself in my life, which I didn't, I love my mother, but and she always made nutritious foods, but she didn't teach about it, right? Yeah. So I never knew what was nutrition, what wasn't nutritious. I mean, some of it's obvious, but once it's in here, once someone's taught you what is nutrition, what's not, or once someone has taught you that you need to put sunblock on or you're going to get burned, that information.
Yeah.
Like that information isn't going anywhere. And so every time you go into the fridge and you reach for something that's not healthy, there's going to be something in your brain that's going to kick off a little bit of guilt, maybe a little bit of like, I really shouldn't be doing this because you know better.
Right.
And I think that's very, very powerful. When you don't know better, when you haven't been taught about nutrition or an equivalent subject, then how do you know? What type of food choices you're making? What's the difference between ice cream and a grilled chicken, or a piece of broccoli? Like you just don't know. But once you know, it's very hard to then override your good common sense and your intellect and tell yourself that you're eating healthy when you're not.
Here's what I think. Okay, my 2 cents, because one of the things I talk about in my line of work, a part of the being successful is getting to the point where repetition is the mother of skill. You start now. What I could see, maybe because the way that you're explaining your book to me, it sounds like a certain amount, and I don't know what percentage of people might read that book over and over again. So I
think they should.
Well, you know what I mean? But, and even if, like you're saying, that's how they would actually get that in their head, because they're seeing it again and again. I mean, that definitely, I think, would make a real difference in that. My kids, and this is not really a good example, but I got my kids started exercising when they're 10 years old, because I learned that you can exercise kids, the prepubescent, if you know how to do it. And here's the truth. I started them at that age, and repetition, they had to come into the gym 3 days a week. And you know what? It's a way of their life now. It's just automatic.
Oh, absolutely. And all kids should be exercising.
You know what I mean?
Listen, you are a pro, so you probably know very specifics about how to exercise the children. But even in schools and things like that, kids should be doing highly active,
right,
physically active activities.
Well, and they've taken that out. They've taken that out of the school, and that's a death sentence to the kids. I'm sorry.
I think it's very wrong, and unfortunately, luckily, a lot of kids still do it as extracurricular, but it's I mean, I can remember the days when I used to have to do physical education during school, and I'll be honest, I don't know how much I got out of it playing dodgeball or whatever sort of semi-active sport that we were doing. There was like, it was half lethargy and half activity, and I wouldn't say it was optimizing your health, but there needs to be some awareness about physical fitness. With children. There needs to be, because once you get them on a track where they're not doing anything, that's hard to break.
It is. And one of the things I did to try to overcome what you're talking about, because I know some stats on the young kids, like 1 in 4, 1 in 5 have high blood sugar already, and it's leading to heart disease, and that's proven, to stroke and all that stuff that you're talking about. And the parents are just as much as a culprit, if not more, than their own kids. And so I thought, okay, that's the obstacle. So I go to the schools and I say, I'll provide, because I worked out a deal with somebody that would pick up kids in a 3-mile radius. I said, bring them to my gym. So the parents say, we can't get them there. I can get them there. And just because it goes to what you're talking about, it really doesn't matter the weight training, it's more, even if it's just body through space and calisthenic oriented.
If they're jumping rope, if they're jumping rope, if they're doing a little bit of shadow boxing, if they're doing swimming, if they're doing basketball,
the activity really doesn't matter. And my idea was building that discipline. I gotta go, I'm gonna be there 3 days a week. We have a car picking you up and you're coming there. Because that's what I did with my kids, and it turned into a daily and a lifestyle ritual. And I think
that's great. And then you have to combine that with what I'm talking about with this, which is the nutrition. And if you go ahead and get this book, which is the case, it's not out yet. It'll be out in a week or two.
Yeah.
The case of the picnic pirates. You will learn a fascinating amount about what the kids should be eating.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then, combining that with their physical training is going to put them in optimum shape.
Absolutely. No question.
For life. And those habits, they're not going to die.
They won't.
When they're 25 years old, they're going to have those habits.
Always. My kids to this day, I got kids that are 40 and 39.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah. I don't
look like you have a 49.
You know what I mean? I mean, when I first started doing this, they were fighting me a little bit, but I told them, they're athletes. I said, if you're going to play sports, what I learned from when I was in Eastern Europe with the sports doctors, blah, 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 is that if you do that, if and when you get hurt, you'll bounce back 50% faster than the people that aren't exercising. And so they fought me in the beginning, but you know what? Once they got past that little phase, and they just became okay, we're just going to the gym. We're not having this internal debate. Dad won't have it type thing. Well, it's golden. They're still doing it on their own, and they'll do it to their kids. I'm sure of it. It just passes itself down.
It's funny because I discovered I was a tennis player, right? So I always had physical fitness in my life to some degree, right? I was a pretty serious tennis player, competitive, growing up, but I didn't cross train, and I knew nothing about cross training. And, sadly, it made me an inferior tennis player because instead of growing my quads and growing my muscles and I'm little, I'm about 5'3". So, in order to compete, I had a I had a power stroke, but, in order to compete more because of my small stature, I needed to really get into the gym and build muscle, but nobody ever taught me that. My coaches never taught me that. It just wasn't part of the culture.
Right.
And it just, it just sort of escaped. And so at the age of 19, I discovered the gym. I discovered the Stairmaster and weightlifting and all this. And I have to tell you, the high that came with discovering, there's a bit of euphoria because we
call it the runner's high. It's the runner's high.
You're releasing endorphins when you're exercising. And I since that time, I've never given up working out. And I only wish that I would have put that together with my sport.
Yeah.
That would have yielded, I mean, that's what professional athletes do, obviously, but
exactly.
It would have yielded, I think, even better results for my sport when I was playing. And that's a performance issue. But in terms of a health issue overall, I think it would have been healthier as well, because talk about balancing your muscles and preventing injuries. I had a wrist injury from tennis, and you could easily injure your legs or, trip on something. And so that strength training, that strength building is a very important part of, I think, any sport. And like you said, even if you don't play sports, it's even more important. Then it becomes about your health.
Well, let me tell you something. It's this training here's what I talk about in my line of work, but it applies to everyone, not just people in sport. Okay. There's three components, arguably a fourth one, which is your mindset, but three components that you must implement in any kind of a routine or regimen that you do. Resistance training of some kind. It doesn't have to be weight training, but resistance training, cardiovascular conditioning, and nutrition. And of those three components, the most difficult and misunderstood one is nutrition. you know, and you're nailing it because that's what you're focusing on.
It's very complex. Nutrition is very complex. And I've, you know, I'll be honest here, I'm 47 years old. I've lived through iterations of the egg being the worst food on the planet for you.
Right.
Okay. When I was growing up, we were told that if you ate an egg, you would drop dead of a heart attack on the floor.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we know that eggs are the perfect protein, and there couldn't be a more healthy food, right? Like, not to pop them, but you know, having a hard-boiled egg is a very healthy practice. If you're non-vegetarian, whatever. So I've lived through, you know, and butter, right? Butter was like the worst thing on earth, but now we're finding that butter's better for you than some of these, some of these synthetic oils. And, you know, so talk about a complicated, you know, issue, which is nutrition, you know, because I would say every 5 years, we sort of change our minds about what's healthy. And first there's the superfood, and now, you know, an acai berry is healthy, but maybe there's too much sugar in it. And, you know, it's quite complicated.
And how can the average person possibly, I mean, you and I are in it. I'm in it every damn day. I'm always looking at the latest research, like what you're talking about. And it's like, so much of this stuff is absolutely backwards compared to the information that's actually out there. And a good example of that is what you're talking about with the egg and butter and things like that, you know, and it's always changing. So that's the big challenge, you know, for you when you're writing these books. So so how are you going to keep getting back to the success of the children that are reading your book?
Well,
are you making?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, are you making like another? You said you're making a different series. Are you making another series that would be something that this person who bought your first series for the kids will buy another series?
So far, I have 3 books and a coloring book. So my first book is about, well, you can really put them in any order, but I have a book about an opera star that keeps getting sick, and she's subject to germs, and she's not doing proper hand hygiene and you know, germ hygiene practices, and that's why she keeps getting sick. So that's lesson number 1 for kids, is how to prevent, you know, germs. So I have another book that is about, like I said, sun protection. So you know, the little piglets of Hawaii are getting blotchy red skin, and they don't know why. So you know, again, Dr. Wu goes through all of her different causes to determine why they're getting blotchy red skin. And so that's topic 2. And then topic 3 would be the nutrition book. So I plan to focus on that as a series right now, give it a little bit of time, and then I'll write another 4 books. You know, so and like I said, my next topic for what's calling out to me is bullying.
I think that's a good one.
I think that, you know, what goes on in schools with certain kids bullying other kids is an epidemic, and it's especially now with computers and cyberbullying and what we have the capacity to do. It's very insidious and very wrong. So I wanted to write a book about that, about, you know, a group of animals that are bullying another group of animals, kind of a thing. I want to write one on dental health, you know, cavity prevention.
That'd be good.
And I want to, and of course, one on exercise. I have not written an exercise one. So I have, the case of the sleeping sloth. So there's going to be a slothy animal somewhere in South America that the kids are mimicking, and they're sleeping. They don't want to move. So, you know, the purpose of that book is going to be how to overcome, you know, or I suppose Dr. Wu will have to figure out why they're not moving, and eventually it'll come to figuring out that there's a sloth here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's gotta take the sloth and say, you need to go live over there or something to that effect,
Right.
because it's keeping the kids from exercising.
Yeah.
So I'll do a whole book on exercise.
Yeah, that's right. Your mind is very active. I mean, you're really out there. I like that because I'm the same way. I sit and I have a lot of alone time, and boy, a lot of stuff goes on there, but you get so many good ideas. And I mean, I like your take on what you're doing, because I think that's really that's kind of your USP. I think your unique selling proposition to these people that are reading these books. I'm going to go back and to the bullying part. It's funny how life is always changing, and how I was raised by my parents and how things are now. I'm not discounting any of it, whether it's good or bad, as it relates to bullying. Bullying was part of our growing up when I was growing up in school. It just was. My parents, I mean, they raised us, not that parents aren't raising their kids tough, but my parents is like, it's just part of the deal. And we had to learn how to adapt. It was
By
different.
the way, it reminds me of the egg, I guess. There might have been different mechanisms as to how to get through that. But sadly these days, I don't know when you were growing up if you saw suicides.
I didn't. No, I don't remember that.
And we're seeing that in our generation, and
that's sad.
That's the part that's on that can't happen.
Yeah, and like I said, back in my days, when growing up as a kid, way different than what's happening now. And
it might have been a more accepted part of life, and that you got beat up, you beat them up back. I don't know, whatever. But that's not happening so much these days. And as kids are now, kids are coming up with a lot of their own personal identities, their gender identities and other things. So it's a lot of fodder for a lot of bullying.
Yeah.
And it's not okay.
No, it's not.
And some of these kids are not equipped. I would say the people that get bullied, they're not equipped to be able to survive the bullying.
Right.
Necessarily, depending on what happens with the school and their parents. Every situation is unique, but and I would say cyberbullying is a new animal that we never had to grow up with, right? When people online tell you go kill yourself.
Yeah, it's awful. It's
people
awful.
do that. Like bullies will do that, and then people actually go do that. They actually go kill themselves, and because like a 9-year-old doesn't yet have the neural connections to understand what they're being told. They just feel the pain.
Yeah.
So a new approach has to be taken.
Oh, I know.
A new approach has to be taken to prevent, God forbid, serious tragedies. So that's kind of why I want to shine a spotlight on it. And listen, the people that are doing the bullying, they come from their own pathology.
Sure.
They have their own lesson that they have to. This is not to say, hey, you're a bully, stop bullying. No, they have to also understand why they're doing their bullying, and why they need to stop, and why the consequences of their actions are so severe.
When I was I was lucky when I was growing up that I got into sport. Sport has saved my life in a lot of ways, especially bodybuilding.
A lot of people, yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's one of the things when I was being bullied, when I look back, because I was bullied, and but my sporting career helped overcome that. You know why? Because I was a good athlete.
You were a good athlete and you got big, but some kids don't get big.
Right. The point that I'm making is that I had an outlet that happened to be a life lesson, because it taught me about discipline, because people made fun of my big lips and I had a forehead that stuck out like Frankenstein. Brutal. No, really.
Ridiculous.
But it hurts. I know, I can understand how that feels. So that I was lucky.
I was bullied too. I was bullied too. Because I was so small. I was so little. When I'll tell you that I was 4 feet tall in middle school.
Yeah.
And then my mother took me to the doctor because she was worried I was never going to gain stature. And the doctor said, if she hits 5 feet ever in her life, it's going to be a miracle.
Really?
They evaluated something called my bone age.
Yeah.
So and somehow, me hitting 5'3", I'm a runaway man. Like, let me tell you, like, the fact that I hit 5'3" was like a huge coup. But all throughout those developing years, when other girls were hitting their stature, hitting 5'6", and then developing, going through puberty. I went through puberty very, very late, like when I was 15, 16. So it was fodder for being laughed at and made fun of. I have to tell you, being on that side of that curve, boy, did that hurt.
It hurts a lot. I mean,
did that hurt? And there's nothing you can do about it.
No,
it's not like I can change. I can, wear stilts and, and pretend to hit puberty. There's nothing you can do.
Right.
So,
exactly.
And for some reason, the other kids don't. I'm not sure what's missing, why kids don't understand that not all children develop at the same rate and the same age. And that's not a reason to bully them.
Yeah, we're all consumed at that age. They have no clue. Obviously,
they're looking at an outward feature and they're judging it, as opposed to realizing there's a whole inner person here. And
I know, that's way too soon.
And hey, Jason may be the funniest kid on earth, but we're not giving him a chance because we think he's got a big forehead or something.
Yeah.
It's just.
Watch that. I'm so sensitive about the big forehead.
You do not. I'll go on record here. You do not have a big forehead.
My head,
forehead.
My bottom part of my face grew into that sucker. That was like, what's that? Jason, what was that program? The Addams Family. You remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. I was that guy.
No.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to ask you this. Okay, so you're an oncologist, and you're doing these books. Do you ever see yourself transitioning completely away from medicine, or will you always have a hand in that? What does that look like to you?
This biotech is very all-consuming, and I see myself doing that for at least a very long period of time. When, and if, hopefully that succeeds, that will make a difference for millions of people. I will have really achieved what I wanted to achieve out of medicine, because I've always been a little bit of a contradiction in terms, like, I love medicine, I love helping people, but I like helping people on a global scale even more.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could help one person, great, but if I could help a million people, I feel even more fulfilled. So once that's done, will I go back to practicing medicine? It's possible. It's very possible. So,
and I'm assuming it's one of those things you can always go back to.
I mean, the skills are never gone, and I'm just taking it one day at a time right now. In a way, like, I'm in an interesting phase of life where I decided I wanted to pursue some of these passions.
Right.
That I've never pursued before.
I think that's awesome.
And I was always a little scared.
Let me tell you something. You got to trust that. And the thing with me is, like, I was born and raised in my culture, Portuguese. I was born and raised. The next generation is going to take over the dairy business and the farm, right? Wasn't in my blood. I was like an outcast in my own damn family back then, because it was like, even when I was the first one to go to college, and my uncles and my family telling my dad, don't let that kid go, it's going to ruin him, that kind of thing. Amazing. Talk about guilt, and so I came back. Is
it perspective an interesting thing? It's just,
and then
you went to college and had this, you did this amazing thing, and
but I ended up on the dairy, as it turned out. And it took about 3 or 4 years, I realized that I was so sad and so frustrated. I just hated my life, and I was already married with small children. But I tell you what I did. I told myself, because I wanted to be a pro athlete more than anything. And I told myself when I was in that situation on the dairy, I said, I'm not going to be able to be an athlete, a football player or a baseball. I'm too old now to really do that, to be competitive at that level. And all I could do to ease the pain was I made a promise to myself. I said, if I ever am able to get a chance to do something that I love, that gave me that buzz that the athletics did, I'm not going to question it, because that's going to be my passion, and I'm going to bank and I'm bet on that passion. And one day I went to the gym because I got in the worst shape of my life at the age of 27. Bodybuilding, the bug bit me when I competed.
Wow.
I knew at that point I could teach people how to, and there was no one doing this in my town. Back then it was a lot different, Rachel. There was no personal trainers in my area. LA, San Francisco, yeah, but it's not like it was today.
Where were you? Can I ask?
Central California. You know where Fresno is?
Yes, sure.
Okay, I'm 40 miles south of Fresno. No one was doing it. And I was at that crossroad. I jumped. It was scary as hell because no one was doing it. But the thing is, passion is, I think that is the best thing that one should listen to, because everything else, it figures itself out, at least from my perspective. I mean, it was scary.
The way I look at it is if it's passion, these books are the perfect example. I'll come up with an idea, like the idea that I just came up with about the sloth or whatever. I didn't just come up with that was in my head. But if, I've put in a lot of effort to putting in these last 4 books, so I do need a little bit of a break. Yeah. But when I wrote this last Picnic Pirates, and once I outlined the ideas for it, okay, and I knew what I wanted to do, I wrote it in one night. Yeah. Amazing how it happens. And that's not to say like, oh, I'm special, I wrote a book in one night. This is to say, I was so passionate about it that I couldn't put it down until it was done. I just couldn't, yep, and and I feel a lot. I feel that way about Calum, my biotech company. So once a business plan. I've never written a business plan. I wrote a 50-page business plan in like a day and a half. Yeah. So when you get passionate about things,
game changer.
It's hard to put it down.
I know.
And I guess that would apply to your weights. You can't put them down. Once you get bitten by that bug, And
the cool thing about it is, this is when I learned to trust my instinct. Because
yes,
I was too afraid to trust it until that point, and it was that moment of truth.
Well, because you don't know if you're going to succeed or fail.
Exactly, but the passion, I think, is the deal breaker, and I can tell. Look, it's all over you. You're just oozing with passion. So it's quite obvious that you're into what you're doing, and it's very infectious. It rubs off on people. I know that because people are constantly telling me, "God, you're so passionate about what you do." I don't notice it. It's just something that it's just me.
Oh, you do. You're making, honestly, you're making me think that I can go out and bodybuild. I can't, but
it's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, well,
you're in a field that's hard to duplicate, because very few people can actually become bodybuilders, right? This is not an easy thing to do.
One of the hardest things I've done. Actually.
One of the hardest things that I think any human can do is become a bodybuilder, but it's exciting, like, to have that as a goal. Wow. Cause that's a challenge.
Well, and here's the thing, what it teaches you is all about life and life lessons, because think about this for a moment. To go into the gym and do it like we do as bodybuilders, we have to take ourselves into the gym every single day and cause suffering. We put ourselves in suffering because the body won't respond unless you do that.
Wow.
When you get to the point where I'm at 40 years of doing this, I have no internal debate. It doesn't matter how I'm feeling. I just go and do this thing. And what a life lesson. It's taught me how to deal with setbacks. It's taught me how to overcome obstacles. Isn't life just that?
Yeah, you're right. Listen, it's like a microcosm for for other things. And
Saved my life.
Sadly in life, things can sometimes get very serious.
Yes.
And, it's good to have those skills to be able, we talked about bullying on that end of the spectrum, but what happens when you get older and then there are problems of older age?
Exactly. I'm there.
Which can be quite challenging.
Yep.
So to have some of those skills to be able to deal with it is
well, and life is,
valuable.
Life is, there's no finish line until you're dead. So there's stuff always coming at you, good and bad. So how do you learn how to deal with that? I mean, in bodybuilding, it taught me that. I had 3 strokes in 3 weeks, 10 years ago, paralyzed. Yeah. If it wasn't for
never know. Wow.
If it wasn't for my background, those are the lessons that I learned to overcome obstacles. So there's a lot of life lessons. You're teaching people to some degree a life lesson, probably more than
a lot of people, not to change the subject, because I'm just blown away by what you just told me, but a lot of people have asked me, writing children's books, how do you write a children's book? Like it's scary. Yeah. How do you write a children's book? I'm like, well, I don't know how to write for a 4 to 8 year olds. And I'll be honest, I got involved with the publisher who wasn't the right fit for me. And I had written some stuff in the past and she just published it.
Yeah.
It wasn't very good. But she put it out there.
Yeah.
And we got the illustrator or whatever and put a book together. And only once I saw, that product was I able to analyze it and say, okay, this is not what I want to be putting out. This is how I want to do it.
Right.
And then I formulated my style.
Right.
And interestingly, once I formulated my style, I attracted in a publishing manager, an editor, and a cover editor, and of course my illustrator. So I have a team. Now they don't write the books. I write the books. They just help, find the mistakes and make it better and whatever. And they do help me outline a little bit sometimes when I'm trying to brainstorm. But somehow through my fear of thinking I can't do this because I have no experience doing this and I've never gone to school for this. And the product is exactly perfect for that age group. And it is, it would be endorsed by, I managed to do it through my fear, and I was terrified.
I just shot something, a video this morning on Instagram. You had to actually put that stuff up. That had to happen for you to get to this point. It's part of it. I tell people, whatever goal that you're trying to achieve, have a stated goal or a sense of purpose. Okay. And really be clear about that. And when you're clear about that, then don't focus on it anymore. Focus on the process of what you're doing. And through that process, you have to keep adapting and growing in that environment. And that lady that put that out, that publisher, that was part of your success. I'm sure that that because it identified.
I had to stumble in order to
absolutely
to succeed with this product. And now I would say these books, I'm very proud of them.
Yeah,
I think anybody who reads them is going to really enjoy them. And in the last few minutes, if you don't mind, can I give the shameless plug of where to?
No, I was going to tell you, where can we find all this for the audience?
So my website, www.drru.health. And like I said, if you give it a week or two, the Picnic Pirates will be out. So you can get the other 3 books right now. And what they do is they take you directly to Amazon. So you can also go to Amazon and type in Dr. Ru, but it's easier if you go to the website, drru.health, and then you just click on the book that you want to buy, and it will take you right to Amazon to shop.
Excellent. Listen, you were a lovely guest. I really appreciate.
Thank you. And you're a wonderful host. Thank you.
I love, one of the things I didn't know that I would like is what we're doing right now. And I just absolutely, I used to be scripted when I came on. I know more about you, but I'd rather just find out a lot more as we're talking like we do now. It's authentic, it's raw, it's good. And you are a fantastic guest with a lot of really good information. I I want to extend the, if you ever want to come back on and share something.
I'd love to.
Yeah. Whenever that happens, just reach out. I think you've reached out with Kara. I think there's something you can get a hold of us.
Yep.
And let's do it again. Okay.
I have your email and I have Kara's information. So absolutely will do. And keep doing what you're doing.
Oh yeah. Forever. This is what I do day in and day out. So anyway, thanks for coming on. We'll talk to you next time. Maybe I'll see you at dentist's one of these days.
Sounds good, Jason. Thank you so much.
Right. See you later.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Serious Growth Podcast. For more episodes like the one you just listened to, subscribe to us on your mobile podcast app and leave us a review. If you'd like to reach out, you can find us online at seriousgrowth.com. Until next time, train smart and train hard.